Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Curios cast. This episode is all about the mystery of D.B. Cooper.
D.B. Cooper.
D.B. Cooper. The name will forever be etched in the annals of history. Have you heard of him before, boys?
Anal.
The annal of history.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, I know the broad strokes.
Yeah.
I know. From what I remember, he's a cool fella. I like him.
Bit of a geezer. You heard of him, Rob?
Yeah, but I don't know enough of him about to know whether or not he's a geezer. So.
Oh well, luckily for you, I've got extensive notes about
jog
D.B.
my
Cooper.
Memory. Excellent.
Yeah, this is one of my favourite mysteries that I know of. I think in terms of like, it's such a good story. I think like it gets you involved. It kind of like plays out like it's a movie. It's a little bit unbelievable, a little bit, it's exciting. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it's great. It's a classic. So, listeners, if you have heard of D.B. Cooper, then obviously apologies, but there may be something new that you're going to learn. If you haven't heard of D.B. Cooper, I definitely recommend reading up about him as well, because I'm not going to do it justice. There's a lot more information about him on the internet. There's a few good videos as well that sort of go into it a bit more, and you can sort of visualize, you can see some of the areas that we're going to talk about as well, which is pretty interesting. So I'm going to crack on now and give you his story. So I'm going to read it verbatim. I've got like a bit of a script that I'm going to go through. So I'm just going to talk you through the events as they unfolded.
I'm going to get comfortable.
Yeah. So, on Thanksgiving Eve, November 24th, 1971, a middle-aged man carrying a black attaché case approached the flight counter of Northwest Orient Airlines at Portland International Airport. He identified himself as Dan Cooper and used cash to purchase a one-way ticket on Flight 305, which was a 30-minute trip to Seattle from Portland. Cooper appeared to be in his mid-40s and at the time was wearing a business suit with a black clip-on tie and a white shirt. Once he was on board, he quietly ordered a drink, which was a bourbon and soda. So he's cracking on.
When was it again? Sorry, when was this?
This was in 1971.
Okay. So it wasn't that long ago, really. I remembered it being like the 50s or 60s or something, but it's not, in the grand scheme of things, it's not.
I think it's because it seems like a classic
film.
I
picture it in black and white, like, yeah.
One flight to Bibera, please.
Bourbon and next plane to Seattle.
Yeah.
But long enough that it was easy. You could just walk up in an airport and buy a plane with cash. Just tell them your name, and that's it.
I was going to say, did you not need a passport? I suppose maybe for internal flight. Do you even need a passport for an internal flight now in America?
I think so, do you?
No, you don't.
No, probably don't. Yeah.
No, I think you need to buy a ticket. You probably need to show some ID.
Yeah, maybe now, but you probably didn't at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's mad. I've always liked the idea of just walking into an airport and just booking a ticket. Can you still do that? I assume you can still do that.
Yeah,
the desks there still, but there never seems to be anyone at the desk. It's always empty.
Yeah, it's not as like romantic as in your head where you're like, the first flight out of here, and then you walk up and you're just like ringing the bell, like, excuse me.
Yeah, that's true. Like you win the lottery and you think you're just going to go to the airport and you actually really spend about 3 hours trying to find someone to book your flight to anywhere.
And then you can just do it on your phone.
Yeah. You're trying to use one of like a touch screen panel that's in there that's not working.
Yeah. Anyway, back to D.B. Cooper, who's sitting on the plane, sipping his bourbon and soda. So shortly after takeoff, Cooper handed a note to Florence Schaffner, who was the flight attendant. Schaffner
sounds like a horrible drink, by the way.
Sorry?
Bourbon and soda. That's whiskey and
soda water, isn't it?
Yeah, that sounds awful. Anyway. Sorry.
It's a good classic film drink as well.
I'm too much of a ponce for whiskey.
Imagine the ice cubes clinking in the glass as he stirs it in black and white.
Yeah, it's a pretty gentleman's drink, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And as we'll see, D.B. Cooper is a gentleman. So he handed a note to Florence Schaffner, who was the flight attendant. Schaffner assumed the note contained a lonely businessman's phone number and just dropped it into her pocket and didn't really, look at it. However, as she walked past, Cooper leaned forward and grabbed her by the arm and whispered, "Miss, you better look at that note because I have a bomb." The note was printed in neat, all capital letters with a felt tip pen. Schaffner recalled that the note said that Cooper had a bomb in his briefcase. After she'd read the note, Cooper told her to sit down beside him. She did as he requested, and then asked to see the bomb, which I think is like a standard procedure. Apparently, back in the 70s and shit, there was like a spate of hijackings with bombs. So flight attendants were told you need to like verify that there is actually a bomb. So they'd have to ask to see the bomb.
Yeah, call their bluff.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do.
I wonder if that ever worked.
Well, there was a thing a while back, wasn't it? Do you remember when those guys posed with someone that had like a suicide jacket that turned out not to be?
Yeah.
It was one of those ones that, I don't know if we spoke about this before, but just in general, my annoyance with the picture, like the articles were going around saying guys took selfie with suicide bombers.
It's not a
no,
selfie.
they didn't. They had a photo taken with the selfie. Yeah, it was not a selfie. Anyway,
I think there's been about 4 instances where you've been triggered by that.
it fucks me off so hard. Anyway, it's like people trying to use internet phrases. Like, you just got it wrong, and then it just becomes the thing because they use it so fucking much.
Yeah.
Like trolling, like to be an internet troll was not just to be a cunt on the internet. Like it used to be to like wind someone up in an amusing jape kind of way, and now it's just anyone that's a cunt on the internet is a troll because the news just got hold of that word. Anyway,
wankers.
I agree.
But
I'm as outraged as you are.
Yeah, but that guy turned out to not have a real bomb, wasn't it? So I wonder if... and the guys that are taking the photo, I guess they clearly knew because they're kind of smiling in the photo. They don't seem that worried,
everyone looks very happy.
Yeah, it's a strange photo. So maybe the procedure is still in place and someone had said, "Whip it out, mate," and they were like, "That's bullshit."
No, the bomb.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, in DB Cooper's case, he opened the briefcase long enough for Schaffner to glimpse 8 red cylinders, 4 on top of 4, attached to wires coated with red insulation and a large cylindrical battery. So she assumed that's a bomb. Looks like a bomb. If it looks like a bomb, smells like a bomb, it's a bomb. After closing the briefcase, he stated his demands, which was $200,000 in negotiable American currency, 4 parachutes, 2 primary and 2 reserve chutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel the aircraft when they landed. I don't know how much $200,000 would be in today's money, but I guess in 1971 it was probably a bit more than it sounds.
Yeah.
In negotiable American currency, so I don't really quite know what that means.
So like bonds, but I still don't really know what that means when I say that.
Negotiable American currency. Maybe that's banknotes that haven't got serial numbers on them or something. I'm not too sure. I don't know.
Might be an old-fashioned thing now. Anyway, he'd ask for cryptocurrency now, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Transferred
Dogecoin.
Yeah, transferred into their exchange.
Don't mention Dogecoin to Rob.
No, don't mention it.
Set him off.
Don't mention it on the internet. We'll set the whole internet off.
By the way, so $200,000 is equivalent to 1.3 million now.
Still quite a reserved amount.
Yeah,
but then when you say like
demand,
when you say equivalent to it just because of inflation, in terms of like people's, like expectation of wealth and standard of living, it might have, it would be a bigger number. Yeah.
Yeah. It's still not an insane amount. Like if you said to me, "I'll give you $1.5 million if you get on that plane and say you've got a bomb," not happening.
Yeah, probably not.
So as she took Schaffner, as she took it in and tried to control her emotions, she was surprised to see that Cooper calmed her down. Like he made her sit down and told her to calm down and made sure she was okay after he'd just shown her a bomb. Which is a
nice guy.
Yeah,
nice guy, Cooper.
So then she left to tell the pilots, and then when she returned, he'd put on a pair of dark sunglasses. I mean, what an absolute geezer, sipping his bourbon. He then ordered another drink, So he ordered another bourbon and soda after saying that he had a bomb.
Brilliant.
So
Not going to say no at that point, are you? Like,
Yeah.
He wants another drink. No, not until you put that bomb away.
Be a good boy.
So in the meantime, the pilots obviously contacted the FBI, and preparations were made to sort of intercept the plane when it landed in Seattle. Whilst they were heading towards Seattle, one of the other flight attendants watched Cooper, and she recalled that he seemed to be familiar with the local terrain, so he sort of knew the flight path where they were going, and didn't seem like a normal criminal. It was described as being calm, polite, and well-spoken, and not like the stereotypes like of hardened criminals or take me to Cuba political dissidents popularly associated with air piracy at the time. So yeah, I think there was a bit of a spate of people, air piracy, people hijacking planes to sort of escape to sort of communist or freer countries than the US.
The land of the free. How can it be a freer country?
One of the other flight attendants said he seemed rather nice. He was never cruel or nasty. He was thoughtful and calm all the time. He paid his drink tab and attempted to give Mucklow the change as a tip, and offered to request meals for the flight crew during the stop in Seattle. Seems like a nice guy.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, FBI agents assembled the ransom money, which was 10,000 unmarked $20 bills, most with serial numbers beginning with the letter L, and most from the 1963A and 1969 series. That's going to become relevant a bit later on. And each of them was a microfilm photograph was made of each of them, so they had a record of each individual banknote that they gave.
So they were serialised, he said?
They were serialised, yeah.
But not marked, but obviously everything's serialised. Yeah.
Non-negotiable or negotiable American currency.
It has to be serialised as money.
Yeah. So they also provided him with parachutes when they landed. However, Cooper rejected military-grade parachutes that were offered and asked instead for civilian parachutes, which, again, comes into play a bit later on when they're trying to figure out who this guy was. So after the delivery so the plane landed, and after the money was put on board with the parachutes, all of the passengers and the flight attendants were told to leave by Cooper, so he let everyone go. He said, "You're free to go." And then the plane was refueled, and then they took off again. And then once they were back in the air, Cooper went to the pilots and told them his flight plan. So he's told them to head towards Mexico City at the minimum airspeed possible without stalling the aircraft, which was approximately 115 miles per hour, at a maximum of 3,000 meters altitude. He also said that the landing gear needs to remain down, the wing flaps be lowered 15 degrees, and the cabin remain unpressurized.
Knew what he was doing.
He knew what he was doing. So obviously, again, he sort of knew what the how to jump out of a plane and not die, and had a vague idea of everything. So he was then told that the plane wouldn't reach Mexico City without being refueled. So they started to discuss other options. And Cooper agreed that they'd have to refuel at Reno in Nevada. Also on takeoff, Cooper said that the type of plane that was used, you might see it in like an old film, it had a set of stairs that came down at the very back of the plane. So now you've got stairs that come out the sides of the plane.
Yeah.
This one had one that comes down directly below the tail, but you can see it in like old.
Yeah,
Harrison
and
Ford
like cargo
film,
planes and stuff still have that, right? Like where you
Yeah.
load up from the back.
Like that. But it's just a set of stairs, so just like a little single set of stairs coming down, rather than like a big thing.
Yeah.
So he said that needs to take off, and that needs to remain down whilst they take off. But he was told you can't because it's not safe. So he said, okay, do it when we take off. As soon as you take off, you need to lower the stairs. So they're flying along with these stairs open inside the plane, or off the back of the plane, sorry. And then as they took off, they were followed by a couple of military jets as well. So I think it was 3 or 4 military jets were following the plane, obviously keeping an eye on it. I guess in case he decided to fly into a building, they'd shoot it down or whatever. So, after takeoff, Cooper told the last remaining flight attendant to join the rest of the crew in the cockpit and remain in there with the door closed. As she complied, she observed Cooper tying something around his waist, which looked like the money bag. At approximately 8 p.m, a warning light flashed in the cockpit, indicating that the aft stair apparatus had been activated. So the last bit of the stairs system at the back of the plane had been activated. One of the co-pilots offered assistance via the intercom, but Cooper refused, and this was the last communication the crew ever had with him. So soon after, the crew noticed a change of air pressure within the plane, indicating that the aft door was open. And then approximately 15 minutes later, the tail section sustained a sudden upward movement large enough to require the pilot to make an adjustment. So it's as though something had gone out the back of the plane. At approximately 10:15, they landed with the stairs still down. And then the FBI and the police boarded the plane, searched the plane. They couldn't find DB Cooper. So Cooper had, at some point between leaving the airport of, what airport was it? Sorry, forgotten now.
Portland. Oh, Seattle.
Portland? Seattle, yeah. So after
one,
leaving
yeah.
Seattle on the way to Reno, Nevada, he jumped out the plane at some point.
It's far out, isn't it?
It's mad, isn't it? Like, it's a pretty ballsy move to do. So they recovered 66 fingerprints on board the plane. They found his black clip-on tie, his tie clip, 2 of the 4 parachutes.
I like the fact he's got a clip-on tie. Is there a relevance to the clip-on tie, or is it just?
It's mentioned quite a lot, but there's I don't think there's any relevance to it.
It's a mystery. Is it just that it's easy? It's just as easy to get a normal tie off. It's probably more of a faff to get a clip-on tie off, isn't it? Like,
surely, yeah.
Well, no, would you pull it? I don't know, but still.
Why would you not keep it on? I guess because it's going to flap in your face.
Get in your face, yeah, all tidy. And, yeah, I don't know.
So yeah, he also found 2 of the parachutes. One had been opened and had parts cut away from the canopy. So potentially he'd use one of them to tie things to, the bag around his body or something like that. Should point out as well that whilst this was happening, it was a storm. There was a huge storm outside the plane. So it wasn't like flying in perfect conditions. It was like a big rainstorm, big thunderstorm going on as they were flying.
I remember thinking this before when I heard about this. He went to all this trouble and he didn't ask for a backpack. Or bring a backpack to put the money in. He's tied it to his waist and had to rip bits off such a thought through plan. He missed what was a vital. Well, backpacks not really a thing in the 70s. Surely they were.
There must have been. Surely,
yeah.
But the whole thing, he was dressed in a suit. He was dressed in a black suit with dress shoes on, and the area that, as we'll find out in a minute, the area that he jumped out over the US is like heavily forested. So he's jumped out over a forest in a storm, dressed in a suit from like 10,000 feet up. So it's going to be freezing. He's going to be wet by the time he reaches the ground. So yeah, again, like you say, it doesn't seem to have planned this bit out.
It's not like he's got a GPS tracker on him or his phone to drop his mate a pin and say, "Pick me up."
Yeah, it's mad. Yeah. So a search area was difficult to define because even slight differences in like estimates of how fast the plane was going or like the wind speed and all that sort of stuff, it would just affect where the plane was at certain times, and they just had no real idea of narrowing it down.
I guess again, you wouldn't have had the direct GPS. You'd have something, I suppose. Yeah, but not as much as today's standards, where you'd know the exact flight path.
Probably just be from like radar pings, I guess.
Yeah.
So everything just changed his projected landing point by a huge amount. And they also didn't know how long he remained in free fall before pulling his parachute.
Yeah.
Because again, that would affect which way the wind might have taken him, how far off of the flight path he would have gone, all that sort of stuff. Neither of the fighter planes saw anything, either visually or on radar, and they didn't see a parachute open. However, it was at night. And like I say, it was extreme weather, limited visibility. So seeing a human jump out of a plane was probably quite difficult. So initially, they placed his landing zone within an area of on the southernmost outreach of Mount St. Helens, which is in Washington State, near Lake Merwin. So search efforts focused on Clark and Cowlitz counties, encompassing the terrain immediately south and north of the Lewis River in southwest Washington. FBI agents and sheriff's deputies searched large areas of the woodland, the mountainous woodland on foot and by helicopter, and local door-to-door searches were undertaken. So farmhouses, cabins were all checked, popular hiking routes, all that sort of stuff. Reservoirs were checked. Nothing was found, so no trace of Cooper. None of the equipment that supposedly he left with, any of the parachutes, things like that, was found in that search area. They also searched using planes, so they flew light aircraft and helicopters with the National Guard, and they saw some broken treetops, bits of plastic, and things that they thought were parachute canopies, but nothing was found to be relevant, or they couldn't confirm anything to be from him. And then winter came and that to stop. So as winter sort of rolled in, or the heavy winter, they couldn't continue checking. So
what
this
time of
happened,
year was it when he did it? Yeah, sorry.
Sorry?
Yeah, you were about to say what time of year it was when he did it.
So it's Thanksgiving, so that's November, I think, isn't it?
Still, so whereabouts? It's still cold where he was, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it must have been cold. I guess over like December, January, that's when the heavy snow will start falling.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's probably not warm at the point that he jumped out. But yeah, so for a good few months they had to stop searching. And then in early 1972, FBI agents and soldiers, along with Air Force personnel, National Guardsmen and civilian volunteers, conducted a second search through Clark and Cowlitz counties in March, and then an additional 18 days in April. They also used a submarine to search Lake Merwin. So they hired a submarine and searched just in case, obviously, he landed and drowned in there, but they didn't find anything.
They went all out to try and find him.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, I mean, the amount of money they probably spent on the search.
Yeah,
unfortunately, it doesn't say that, but it must have been a pretty substantial amount. During the search, 2 women found a skeleton in an abandoned cabin, which was later identified as the remains of a teenage girl who had been abducted and murdered several weeks before, which is a sad little side note to the story. Ultimately, the search and recovery operation, which is thought to be one of the most extensive and intensive in US history, uncovered no significant material evidence related to the hijacking. So they weren't successful in finding any trace of DB Cooper. So he seemingly, at this point, has got away with the equivalent of $1.3 million in today's money.
Lad.
So a month after the hijacking, the FBI distributed lists of the ransom serial numbers. So remember, they had all the serial numbers of the individual banknotes. So they distributed them to financial institutions, so banks, casinos, racetracks, and businesses that did large cash transactions, and to law enforcement agencies around the world. So like Interpol, Metropolitan Police, every single major police agency received a list of all the serial numbers. The airline offered a reward of 15% of the recovered money, up to a maximum of $25,000. And then later in the year, all of the serial numbers were released to the public. So they're all still publicly available on the FBI's website. But that's
So I think about this now. If he, so they put the serial numbers out to places where he might have spent bigs, but it's not everyone ever. They weren't just constantly checking all serial numbers that ever made it back to wherever the fuck money eventually ends up back at. So he could have just lived out peacefully and gradually spent it little bits by bits. And
that's the clever thing to do, isn't it? Not do big.
And eventually, I guess money gets burnt. Eventually, it comes back and gets it's old money, and they make new money. That must happen at some point. It just gets incinerated and got rid of.
Yeah, you would have thought that like at least one or a handful of these notes would have made its way somewhere that it would have got picked up, right? Like even if he was just buying little bits in the odd gas station and
might not have traced it back to
shop
him
here
or
and there.
someone's.
Like then that goes somewhere, right?
Well, Tom, I'm glad you asked.
Wow.
Well, I'm glad you suggested that because some of the money was recovered. However, it wasn't from the hands of DB Cooper. So in 1980, so this is 8 years later. So the serial numbers were released in 1972. Before in 1972, actually, there was a couple of people that got arrested because they had printed fake banknotes with the serial numbers on them to try and get money out of like magazines and newspapers and stuff. So obviously, it caused a bit of a stir. So anyway, fast
not
forward.
A smart thing to do.
That's just forging money, isn't it?
So fast forward to 1980. Brian Ingram, 8-year-old, was vacationing, if I can say that right, with his family on the Columbia River in about 14 kilometres downstream from Vancouver, Washington, and 20 miles southwest of Ariel. So it's a little bit further south than the search area that the FBI were looking. As he was playing by the river, he uncovered 3 packets of money as he raked the sandy riverbank to build a campfire. All of the dollar bills were disintegrated, but they were still bundled in rubber bands, so in rubber band packets. FBI technicians confirmed that the money was indeed a portion of the ransom. It was 2 packets of $120 bills and a third packet of 90, all arranged in the same order as when given to Cooper.
So how much is that? About $3,000?
Yeah. Like a substantial, a good little wedge.
No. I might have been an idiot there. $120 bills.
$120 bills
$2,000.
is... Wait, you're asking the wrong person. I don't know why.
$4,000. So it was about $6,000.
Not bad. Not a bad haul for an 8-year-old. So obviously this raised a lot of questions. Does this prove that DB Cooper didn't survive? Did he obviously... something happened in the air and he the bag, did he drop the bag and it's blown over and eventually found its way into the river, or has he stashed it? Did he stash the money and this is his stash that he's forgotten about, he's not been able to come and claim? So there's a lot of obviously conjecture. So there's a few theories about it, trying to figure out whether it had like flowed into the river or whether it had been placed there or anything like that. So they got like hydrologists in who noted that the bills had disintegrated in a rounded fashion and were matted together, indicating that they had been deposited by river action as opposed to having been deliberately buried. So that conclusion, if correct, supported the opinion that Cooper had not landed near Lake Merwin or any tributary of the Lewis River, which feeds into the Columbia River. And it also led credence to speculation that placed the drop zone near the Washougal River, which merges with the Columbia upstream from the discovery site. However, it did not explain why there were 10 bills missing from one packet, and there was no logical reason why that the packets would have remained together after separating from the rest of the money. So why would these 3 packets have been held together when the rest of the money's disappeared?
I guess he could have separate it in order to tie it to himself
potentially. Yeah, I think that what they were saying was this is evidence that he didn't mean to put it in the river, so therefore maybe he died and this has just been washed into the river and washed downstream.
Okay.
Potentially. Also, it's incompatible with geologic evidence. So one of the experts observed that free floating bundles would have had to have washed up on the riverbank within a couple of years of the hijacking. Otherwise, the rubber bands would have deteriorated much quicker. Can't even speak at the moment.
So I didn't get that. What are they saying there then?
So they're saying that if they had just been floating down the river, they would
for
have
8 years.
been on the riverbank a lot sooner because the rubber bands would have deteriorated and they would have obviously flown loose, whereas the rubber bands were still on the...
So they're saying it's been somewhere else and then the river's knocked it loose.
Potentially, yeah. So they may have been buried or they've been placed in the river, or they found their way into the river, after the event. So they didn't just fall in the river during the event,
right?
But maybe survived. He's buried them somewhere or he stashed them somewhere. And then somehow 2 or 3 years later or whenever they've been washed into the river and then been found.
Yeah, interesting.
So it doesn't really help finding him, but it's just they're trying to theorise whether whether he's done it on purpose or not. And there was
there's a subreddit for DB Cooper.
Probably.
Yeah, there's got there's a Discord chat for DB Cooper. That's more of like there's probably more like a Yahoo questions group for DB Cooper, isn't there? Like.
They also did some recent analysis of diatoms. I'm not really too sure what diatoms is. I'm assuming it's to do with probably...
It's not very nice for old McLeod here.
What?
Diatoms.
Oh.
Very good.
It's going to be to do with like radiation or something probably. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what that
anyway. So that it suggests that the bundles found were not submerged in the river or buried dry at the time of the hijacking in November 1971. Only diatoms that bloom. Okay, so it must be something to do with like algae or something like that. So only diatoms that bloom during springtime were found, placing the date range that the money entered the water at least several months after the hijacking. So again, suggesting that it hasn't happened. He didn't fall into the river or he didn't fall into a lake or anything like that. Anyway, nothing really came of it. And in 1986, the recovered bills were divided equally between the boy, Ingram, and the insurance company of the airline. So he managed to keep some of these dollar bills and he sold 15 of them in 2008 for $37,000. It's not a bad,
decent.
It's not a bad little investment.
Nice turnover.
Yeah. And then to date, none of the other 9,710 other bills have turned up anywhere. And like I said, the serial numbers are still available online on the FBI website. So if you've got any dollars in your pocket that you want to check, you might have like imagine how much money one of those would sell for. I reckon you get a bit of money from.
Yeah.
Probably be confiscated, right? As evidence.
I don't know though, because that kid got to keep them, didn't he?
Yeah.
So I don't know. So there's a few theories on the tie. So going back to his clip-on tie, there was high traces of titanium found on the tie. So titanium was much rarer in the 1970s than in the 2010s at the time the tie was analysed, and at that time it was only found in metal fabrication or production facilities or specific chemical companies. So it suggested that he may have been a chemist or a metallurgist or possibly an engineer or a manager who were at that time the only employees who wore ties in such facilities. So that offered another theory. He might have been disgruntled if his business had been put out of work by the airline, if they were manufacturing parts for planes. That's one of the theories that was put forward. Probably unlikely. I don't really think that's true. And there was other sort of rare earth materials found as well on the tie, which again suggested that he'd been working in like, specific employment. He wasn't just in an office or something like that. It narrowed down where he possibly could have worked.
I just found a good little WordPress thing that I've linked to you to have a look at as well afterwards. It's like some guy just quickly saw a thing where the guys are like arguing on another web. I found the web page that I was reading the Cicadia mystery thing from, fandom thing. There's a whole DB Cooper bit on that, and at the bottom it links to another article where there's like arguments in the comments, and this is the real such and such. I don't know, maybe the Robert Blevins, is he something to do with it? Was he maybe supposedly a cop investigator at the time? I don't know. Anyway, he's got a whole website about it. That's what I've just linked on WordPress.
Yeah, we'll have to get him interviewed. Tom.
Yeah.
So I looked to see if there was a DB Cooper subreddit, and there is. It's not that active. There's 2,000 members, 7 online right now, and it is just a lot of like odd posts and memes and stuff. But there's also a Reddit user by the name DB Cooper 2230 who is well, one of his recent posts here says that he is a 20-year-old male young slut looking for an older man to dominate me in the Tennessee Gone Wild subreddit. And then another one in the Nashville Gone Wild subreddit. 20-year-old male looking for an older man to dominate me. And then like you could, and then this guy is like, fair on him. Like he's commenting on people's posts. People who have posted pictures of their dick. Like this guy, I'm literally just looking at a picture of this guy's dick now. It says, "Is a 42-year-old man stroking my cock in my car? Does anyone want to park next to me and watch?" He's like, "I do. PM me." This guy just uses Reddit to hook up with other guys in Tennessee, and he goes by the name DB Cooper.
There you go.
So
From
now we know what
hijacking planes to wanking in cars.
Yeah, that's what he does now.
mystery solved. Yeah. Need my
How
cock
old would he
sucked
be
so
now?
bad.
If he was alive now, so how do we know roughly his age in the 70s?
Well,
Would he just be
it
strong
says-
dead?
it's like you're reading my notes here, Rob.
Oh, fucking hell.
So his description was around 5 feet 10 inches, mid 40s with close set, piercing brown eyes and swarthy skin. So mid 40s in 1971.
He'd be like 90 something.
Pretty old now.
Yeah, okay.
I believe he's
so-
still kicking around. You know, he's not a 20-year-old male in Tennessee, but he's still doing bits.
That's his grandson, just walking and getting sucked off everywhere.
Yeah, so he appeared to be pretty familiar with parachuting and planes, how planes worked. Obviously, he knew the correct airspeed to slow the plane down to make sure he was going to survive the jump. Knowledgeable about the terrain, the aircraft flying technique, and the general area. They couldn't figure out what his accent was. He just had like a sort of generic American accent. They weren't able to place sort of state accent or anything like that. He also knew a lot about how to refuel planes. Weirdly, I don't know why that was sort of important, but he knew how long like a typical refueling time would be, and he knew some of the details about the planes that a standard person wouldn't know, like the staircase being able to be lowered during a flight, which it wasn't public knowledge. Afterwards, actually, like a new device was fitted to all planes called the Cooper mechanism that prevented the stairs from being opened during flight. So he's got like a little lasting legacy that now no planes can be opened during flights.
That's cool.
Nice.
So he may also have known that the CIA at the time using 272, so the type of plane to drop agents and supplies behind enemy lines during the Vietnam War. So again, he could have been, in the Air Force or something like that. But anyway, so he's never been found. There was no trace of DB Cooper was ever found. He vanished into thin air. The only thing that's ever been found is that little group of banknotes that were found back in the 80s. There's loads of suspects. I'm not going to list them all here because there's literally 15 plus, and a lot of them are similar. They're sort of people that have been in the army, perhaps like a paratrooper, or they've worked for the CIA, or they've worked in the military, the Air Force, and then they've also been involved in crime. And then as they've got older, they've either confessed to not directly saying they're DB Cooper, but they've confessed to robbing a substantial amount of money and pulling off like a heist, or their children have suspected that they had some involvement in it, and they've put their names forward to potentially be DB Cooper. There's a couple of interesting ones, including some that they've sort of mocked up next to the mock-up of DB Cooper. So if you let me link to DB Cooper's page in the chat, and there's like a mock-up of what he looked like with and without glasses.
It's a pretty detailed drawing. Like it's not You know, you see some sketches and you're like, that could fit quite a lot of people, but this is just looks like a very accurate drawing. From what I can
It's
imagine.
got like some specifics to it. But at the bottom of that page, there's a list of suspects. Again, anyone who's listening, if you want to read more into it, just the Wikipedia page alone has got all of the suspects and a lot of the photos, and you can directly compare the photos to the sketch. And some of them look like a dead ringer for DB Cooper. Like especially there's a guy called Robert Rackstraw, who I think he was again, he was in the army. He was part of like a helicopter crew during the Vietnam War, and he was a bit of a wrong one after the war. You know, he got into some trouble with the police and all that sort of stuff. So part of the reason why they think he could be DB Cooper was because he knew about parachuting. He'd been involved in crime. And he fitted the age in the description of DB Cooper. And if you look at his photo, he does look very, very similar. But who knows? It's one of those things that I don't think we're ever gonna find out who DB Cooper was, because yeah, like you say, at this point he's probably either dead if he did survive, or very, very old. So,
well, apparently, and this thing I've seen, that they did find a parachute somewhere, which the FBI dismissed. It was found in 2008, and it was dismissed later by the Seattle FBI, saying it's the right colour, the right size, and found in the right place. A week later, so that's what they first said. A week later, they dismissed it based solely on the opinion of Cooper parachute packer Earl Cossey, who claimed he knew it wasn't Cooper's because it was made of silk, and the ones he packed were made of ripstop nylon. But silk is a natural substance and rots in the ground. Nylon does not. And shoot experts who saw some of the pictures released by the FBI say it is obviously nylon, not silk. To make things even more weird, if you inquire about the Amboy shoot today, the Seattle FBI tells you they can't discuss it because it is an evidence in an ongoing case.
Ooh, so potentially there are.
2008 though. So how is the parachute packer? He's still supposedly got a good enough memory of the parachute that he packed. He must be in his fucking 80s.
Wait, so the parachute wasn't found until 2008?
Apparently, yeah.
Wow.
It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, so in that I thought you were saying they found it very shortly after the incident, and maybe the silk just hadn't had time to, rot away. But
yeah, it says
it definitely would have rotted
in 2008,
in that amount of time.
Yeah.
One of the suspects is quite interesting, a guy called Richard McCoy Jr., who again was a Vietnam veteran. He served as a helicopter pilot, and he was a recreational skydiver as well, so he had experience skydiving. And then in 1972, so a year and a bit after the DB Cooper hijacking, he staged a copycat hijacking. So he boarded the same type of plane in Colorado, and then brandished what was later found to be a paperweight resembling a hand grenade and an unloaded handgun, demanded 4 parachutes and $500,000. After the money and the parachutes were delivered, the plane took back off, and he jumped out of the plane somewhere over Utah, leaving behind his hijacking instructions and his fingerprints on a magazine he'd been reading. However, his handwriting was traced to him by someone from his military career. I think it was one of his trainers or something recognised his handwriting, or a handwriting expert, sorry. And he was arrested and sentenced to a 45-year sentence. However, he escaped. He kept escaping from prison, and he was eventually shot and killed in a shootout. But again, he's got he looks like DB Cooper, the photo, and he did something very, very similar very soon after. So he's quite an interesting one to read into. But yeah, so that's pretty much DB Cooper. I mean, like I say, there's a lot more to
I really like it. I want to get
discuss
into
about
that.
it.
Yeah, and read all these forums about it. I really like the main one I found is probably it's probably not going to be Reddit posts, is it? What I found is some dude's WordPress website, and it's just that's mainly the sort of shit you're going to find out there about it, and it's an old school one. And they've only this website's really odd. I can't quite work out. It looks like you're reading the bottom. Click on that link I sent. It looks like you're reading, the bottom of a of the shit sort of articles we normally read.
Oh yeah,
It looks like the bottom of them. The whole website looks like them.
yeah.
It confused
That's
me at
referred
first.
to as
I
the
was like,
chum bucket.
what? That's what they call.
That is, yeah, like that when you go on those websites that have like shit
Yeah.
articles, and then you find even more shit articles at the bottom
Yeah.
that are just
That's the chum
yeah, the
bucket.
chum
That's
bucket.
interesting. Yeah, the whole website looks like that, doesn't it?
yeah.
That's great.
It confused me at first. I was like, wait, where's the, what have I just, and sometimes, because sometimes that's all it loads at first, isn't it? And then the website, the article loads.
Yeah.
You ever do that? So that's what I thought would happen. I was like, when's the actual page going?
Yeah, it is an interesting one. I was thinking, like, when you hear those stories about people that jump out of planes or fall out of planes or, fall from an incredible height and somehow just survive with no injuries. Like, your body goes limp and then you just bounce across the ground and no broken bones. You don't die or anything like that. It's crazy. There's this. I remember when I was a kid reading Guinness World Record book, and it's this woman has the world record for like the highest fall without a parachute surviving, and she didn't do it on purpose. She was like in a plane crash and fell from literally like thousands of feet and survived. And I'm
That's
pretty sure she had like
crazy.
no injuries as well.
What?
Yeah.
I wonder if she can remember it, or whether like her brain,
Was it just one of those things like
regressed it or boxed it
sheer
out.
complete fluke of like the way the wind caught her at a certain time and
Yeah, well, I think she passed
Broke
out.
the
So like
fall
you're
and-
more likely to survive if your body's really limp.
yeah,
So it just
Yeah, always
absorbs the
definitely, yeah.
impact. And
yeah.
I guess she just got lucky with like maybe the way she landed. Maybe like some trees slowed her down or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know where
yeah.
she landed, but was
That's
fine.
crazy.
It's crazy. Imagine
Yeah.
like the last thing you remember is falling through the sky and then you just wake up on the ground. Did that actually happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be a
Fucking-
trip, man.
She had one hell of a headache though.
You ever seen those things where people do like a prank where they're like flying their mate in a plane and they say they're going to crash and they go, we're and their mate's like, it's got to be one of the, I think that'd be awesome to go through that because thinking you are like, that is you decided, done, my number's up. You'd be convinced when you're like, this is it, I'm now dying.
That adrenaline
Fuck
rush.
me. Yeah.
Like,
and
you'll
then when
never feel more alive than when
No,
you're
yeah,
about to die.
Yeah. I wish someone would have done it to me, like without telling me.
Oh,
But
give it a go then.
I'll always suspect now. You can't like.
Yeah, I like
Oh.
that DB Cooper story.
Yeah, thanks, George.
Gets on the plane, a gentleman the whole way through, even tipping the staff, grabs his money, jumps out the plane.
Yeah, it's the thing. Like he wasn't nasty. I'm rooting for DB Cooper. I hope he survived, and I hope
I think
he-
that's why it captures the imagination of so many
Hmm.
because it's like it's odd that he's different, isn't he? And it's kind of like a James Bond-esque. It is like you say, it's like a film, isn't it? You can like picture it. I wonder how much of it's romanticized through time and telling.
Yeah.
and-
Potentially, yeah.
You're almost happy he got away with it as well. Like,
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I hope he survived.
because if
Everyone does. That's why people like it because they hope he survived. It's almost like a no one was injured in the making of this scat.
yeah,
You know,
like if they did find
yeah.
him dead, like a couple months or years later, you'd be like, oh, that
Yeah.
sucks. That's not
Yeah.
even a story. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one's like, oh, that damn DB Cooper stealing the FBI's money.
Yeah.
I hope they catch him. He's like, yeah, good guy cop, good guy cop, good guy
Yeah.
a hijacker.
Like, obviously, they've got an
yeah, it
open
wouldn't happen now, would
investigation
it?
still, which I think it is still listed as an open investigation. Obviously, they're
That's
still like
interesting.
spending money on it.
Do they know, or is it just like in a file somewhere?
Yeah, I guess so. But I don't know if to like get every so often, every cold
Probably
case has to
re-go
at
every-
least be
yeah.
looked at.
Yeah, probably. I suppose.
So
Otherwise,
I don't know.
otherwise you'd close it and archive it, wouldn't you? I suppose if you're not even
Yeah.
going to look at it. Mm.
Well, I guess this year. No, wait, isn't this? There might be an anniversary of 71.
Yeah.
What's that? 30, 40,
50.
50 years this year.
Yeah.
Ah,
So this November will be 50 years since DB Cooper bossed it out of a plane.
yeah. There was a on the July the 9th to the 11th. There is a DB Cooper 50th anniversary party.
Let's go.
Should we upload this
Yeah.
then?
Yeah.
We uploaded this just for today.
Yeah.
Happy DB Cooper anniversary, everyone.
It's a festival organised group camp out with certain amenities provided.
certain amenities.
July the 9th, 2021. We encourage you to get the COVID-19 vaccine shots. Oh, we're never going to be able to get to go there. That looks sick, though.
Where is it in America?
It's in America, yeah. I really want to go. Anyway, cheers, George.
That's all right. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of DB Cooper.
If you're listening to this,
look it up.
If you're listening to this from the 50th anniversary DB Cooper party in July, then yeah, give us a wave because we'll be there too.
Yeah, and if you are DB Cooper, let us know.
Yeah.
Or don't.
Imagine if that was it. Imagine
Imagine
if after all this time he just went, yeah, you know what, lads, I'll tell you free. I'll tell you.
We got the scoop on DB Cooper.
Yeah, he happens to already be a subscriber. All right, nice one.
Cool. All the best. Thanks for listening.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.